The research vessel Bigdu drifted slowly through the darkness of space. It was a small ship, not built for war or speed. It was built for discovery. 12 people lived and worked inside its metal walls, far from Earth, far from home. Dr. Hanmina stood near the observation window and looked out at the stars. She had spent 15 years studying life on other worlds. She had found bacteria on moons and strange plants on distant planets, but she had never found intelligent life. No one had. Humanity was alone in the universe, or so everyone believed. The Kepler 442 system was quiet and empty. 3 planets circled a dim orange star. None of them had life, but there were strange energy readings coming from the outer edge of the system. That was why the Bigdu had come here. Ensign Choi Sung sat at the communications station. He was young, only 24 years old. This was his first deep space mission. He watched his screens with tired eyes. For 3 weeks there had been nothing but silence. Then something changed. A light blinked on his console. Sung sat up straight and looked at the data. His heart began to beat faster. There was a signal coming from somewhere beyond the 3rd planet. It was not random noise. It was structured, mathematical, organized. Someone was sending a message. Sung's hands shook as he worked to clean up the signal. He ran it through the computer again and again. The result was always the same. This was not natural. This was artificial. This was made by something intelligent. He pressed the intercom button. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Dr. Han, you need to come to the bridge right now." Mina arrived 2 minutes later. Other crew members followed her. They gathered around Sung's station and watched as he played the signal on the speakers. It was a series of tones, rising and falling in a pattern. Prime numbers: 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. The universal language of mathematics. Mina covered her mouth with her hand. Tears formed in her eyes. "We found them," she whispered. "We actually found them." The crew erupted in excitement. People hugged each other and laughed. Someone opened a bottle of rice wine they had been saving. This was the greatest moment in human history. First contact with alien life. Mina quickly took control of the situation. She ordered everyone to follow first contact protocols. They would send a response using the same mathematical patterns. They would show that they were intelligent too. They would show that they came in peace. Sung worked with Mina to compose the message. They used prime numbers, then moved to basic geometry. Circles, triangles, squares. Simple concepts that any intelligent species would understand. They transmitted the message and waited. The response came faster than anyone expected. 3 hours later, space itself seemed to tear open near the edge of the system. Bright light flashed across the darkness. 3 massive ships emerged from what looked like holes in reality. Each ship was larger than anything humans had ever built. Dark metal hulls covered with strange symbols. Weapons that glowed with blue energy. The crew of the Bigdu stared at their screens in silence. The celebration was over. Fear had taken its place. The alien ships moved closer. They did not rush. They moved with the confidence of predators who knew their prey could not escape. A new signal came through the communications system. This time it was not mathematics. It was a voice, cold and sharp, translated through some kind of computer program. "Primitive vessel, you have been detected in Velari space. Identify yourselves and prepare for integration into the Dominion." Mina stepped forward and spoke into the microphone. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking. "This is Dr. Han Mina of the Earth vessel Bigdu. We are explorers and scientists. We come in peace. We wish only to learn and share knowledge." There was a pause. Then the voice returned, and this time there was amusement in it. "Peace, knowledge, how touching. I am High Commander Thel of the Velari Dominion. We have encountered 43 species in this galaxy. All of them now serve us. Your kind will be no different." Mina tried again. "We have no desire for conflict. Humanity values cooperation and mutual respect. Perhaps we can establish diplomatic relations, an exchange of culture and ideas." Thel laughed. The sound was harsh and ugly through the speakers. "You do not understand, small creature. There is no negotiation. There is only submission. You will surrender your vessel and all data within it. Your crew will be processed and assigned roles within the Dominion. This is not a request." The crew looked at each other with fear in their eyes. The Beakdu had no weapons. It had no shields. It was a research ship, not a warship. They could not fight. They could not run. Thel continued speaking. "You have one solar cycle to comply. If you do not surrender, you will face correction. This communication is ended." The channel went silent. Mina turned to face her crew. 12 frightened people looked back at her. Some were crying. Some were praying. None of them knew what to do. But Ensign Choi Sung was already moving. He walked quickly to a secondary console and began typing commands. Mina watched him with confusion. "Sung, what are you doing?" The young man did not look up from his work. "The Beakdu has a quantum-entangled relay, emergency communication system. It can send a message to Earth Command instantly, faster than light." Hope flickered in Mina's chest. "Can the aliens detect it?" "I do not think so. It is a very small signal, but it will reach Earth in seconds." Mina nodded slowly. "Do it. Send everything. Our location, the alien ships, their demands, everything." Sung typed faster. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Within minutes, the message was ready. He looked at Mina one last time, waiting for her approval. She placed her hand on his shoulder. "Send it." He pressed the button. Somewhere across the galaxy, on a small blue planet called Earth, an alarm began to ring in a military command center. Officers rushed to their stations. Admirals were pulled from their beds. The message from the Beakdu appeared on every screen. First contact had been made, and it had gone terribly wrong. Far away in the Kepler 442 system, the crew of the Beakdu could only wait. They had no weapons to fight. They had no engines fast enough to run. They had only hope. Hope that someone would come. Hope that humanity would not abandon them in the dark. Dr. Han Mina returned to the observation window and looked out at the alien ships. They hung in space like predators waiting for their prey to give up. She thought about her family back on Earth. Her mother, her sister, her young nephew who dreamed of becoming an astronaut. She wondered if she would ever see them again. But deep in her heart, a small fire still burned. Humanity had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They had crawled out of caves and reached for the stars. They did not give up easily. They never had. Someone would come. She had to believe that. Someone would come. The UENS Gwangido was not a beautiful ship. It was not elegant or graceful. It was built for one purpose only: war. 300 meters of dark gray metal and heavy armor. Railguns that could punch holes through moons. Missile bays loaded with enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. The Gwangido was a Sejong-class heavy cruiser, named after a great king who had protected his people long ago. Captain Park Tae-ho stood on the bridge and watched his crew work. He was 52 years old with gray hair and a calm face. He had fought in 3 wars before becoming a starship captain. He had seen friends die. He had killed enemies with his own hands. Violence was not something he enjoyed, but it was something he understood. The ship was patrolling the outer colonies when the message arrived. Lieutenant Commander Kim Yuna received it first. She was the first officer and weapons specialist, a woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. She read the message twice before speaking. "Captain, we have a priority alert from Earth Command. A civilian research vessel called Beakdu has made contact with hostile aliens in the Kepler 442 system." Tae-ho turned to face her. "Hostile?" "Yes, sir. 3 alien warships. They call themselves the Velari Dominion. They have given our people 1 solar cycle to surrender or face destruction." The bridge went quiet. Every officer stopped what they were doing and listened. Tiho walked to Yuna's station and read the message himself. 12 civilians, scientists and researchers, people who had gone into space looking for knowledge, not conflict. Now they were trapped, surrounded by enemies, waiting to die. He did not hesitate. Navigation, plot a course to Kepler 442, maximum speed. The navigation officer looked up with surprise. Sir, that system is 37 light-years away. Even at maximum fold space, it will take us several hours. And we do not know anything about these aliens. Their weapons, their defenses, their numbers. Tiho's voice remained calm. I heard you plot the course. Yuna stepped closer to the captain. She spoke quietly so the crew would not hear. Tiho, this could be a trap. We are one ship against 3 unknown enemies. Command has not authorized this action. Tiho looked at her with steady eyes. 12 of our people are going to die if we do not go. Civilians, scientists, people who trusted that their government would protect them. He paused. I will not let them die alone in the dark. Yuna studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded. I will prepare the weapons systems. We will be ready for combat when we arrive. Tiho placed a hand on her shoulder. Thank you, Yuna. She smiled slightly. Do not thank me yet, we might all die today. As the Guangido prepared to jump, something very different was happening aboard the Velari flagship. High Commander Thel stood in his command chamber and looked at the holographic display of the human ship. It was so small, so weak. He felt nothing but contempt for these creatures. They had appeared from nowhere, babbling about peace and cooperation. Pathetic. The Velari Dominion had ruled this sector of space for 3,000 years. They had conquered 43 species. Some had fought. Some had surrendered. All had fallen. The humans would be no different. But not everyone on the ship shared Thel's confidence. Elder Valeth was very old, even by Velari standards. His skin was pale gray and covered with wrinkles. He had spent his entire life studying history, collecting records from the ancient times. Most Velari thought history was boring and useless, but Valeth knew that the past held warnings that the present often ignored. He sat in his small chamber and scrolled through ancient texts on his data screen. Something about these humans troubled him. Their ship was primitive, yes, but there was something in the way they communicated, something familiar. Then he found it. A record from 4,000 years ago, buried in files that most Velari had forgotten existed. It spoke of a species from a small blue world in an unremarkable system. They called themselves Terrans. The record was incomplete, damaged by time, but what remained was disturbing. The ancient Velari had encountered these Terrans during their early expansion. They had expected an easy conquest, just like all the others. They had been wrong. The war that followed lasted 200 years. The Velari had superior technology, superior numbers, superior resources, but the Terrans would not surrender. They fought with a fury that the Velari had never seen before. They adapted. They learned. They sacrificed themselves in ways that made no logical sense. In the end, both civilizations nearly destroyed each other. The Velari withdrew and erased the war from their public records. It was too shameful to remember. The Terrans were left alone, and eventually the Velari forgot they existed. Until now. Valeth felt cold fear creeping through his body. He hurried through the corridors of the ship until he found Sub-Commander Rin. She was younger than Thel, more thoughtful. Perhaps she would listen. Sub-Commander, I must speak with you. It is urgent. Rin looked at the old historian with surprise. Elder Valeth, what brings you here? Valeth showed her the ancient records. He explained what he had found. The Terrans, the war, the near destruction of the Velari Dominion. Rin listened carefully, but her expression did not change. These records are 4,000 years old, Elder. Even if they are true, these humans are clearly primitive. They have one small ship with no weapons. They are not a threat. But they might become one, Valeth insisted. The ancient texts say the Terrans were dangerous not because of their technology but because of their nature. They did not fight like other species. They fought like cornered animals, like creatures with nothing to lose. Rin shook her head. You worry too much, Elder. High Commander Thel knows what he is doing. These humans will submit like all the others. Go back to your books. Leave the military matters to us. She walked away, leaving Valeth alone in the corridor. The old historian looked down at his data screen. The ancient warning glowed in the dim light. He hoped Rin was right. He hoped these humans were different from their ancestors. But deep in his heart, he knew the truth. The Terrans were coming, and the Velari had just made a terrible mistake. Back on the Beekdu, the hours passed slowly. Dr. Hanmina sat with her crew in the common room. They talked about their families, their homes, their dreams. Some cried, some laughed. They were preparing themselves for the end. Ensign Choi Sung stayed at his station, watching the sensors. He had not slept since the aliens arrived. His eyes burned with exhaustion, but he refused to leave. If help was coming, he wanted to be the first to see it. The deadline was approaching. Soon, the Velari would attack. The Beekdu had no way to defend itself. Then Sung saw something on his screen. A small distortion at the edge of the system. Energy readings that did not match anything natural. His heart began to pound. Dr. Han, he called out, his voice shaking. Something is happening, something is coming. Mina rushed to his side and looked at the data. Her eyes went wide. Space was tearing open. A hole appeared in the fabric of reality itself, burning with bright white light. And from that hole, a ship emerged. It was not a small ship. It was not a research vessel. It was a warship, dark and powerful, bristling with weapons. On its hull, painted in white letters, was a name, GWANGGATO. Tears streamed down Mina's face. They came, she whispered. They actually came. Somewhere on the Velari flagship, an alarm began to sound. High Commander Thel looked at his tactical display and saw the new contact. One ship, just one. He smiled. So the humans have sent a warrior to save their sheep, he said. How amusing. Prepare weapons. Let us show these primitives what real power looks like. He did not see Elder Valeth standing in the shadows, watching with horror in his eyes. The wolves had arrived, and the hunt was about to begin. High Commander Thel stood at the center of his bridge and watched the human warship on his display. It was impressive for a primitive species, he admitted. Large, heavily armored, covered with weapons. But it was still just one ship against 3 Velari cruisers. The outcome was certain. Open a communication channel, Thel ordered. Let us speak to these newcomers. The channel opened with a soft hum. Thel straightened his posture and spoke with the same arrogance he always used. Human vessel, this is High Commander Thel of the Velari Dominion. You have entered restricted space. Identify yourself and explain your presence here. The response came quickly. A human voice, male, calm and cold like winter ice. This is Captain Park Tiho of the United Earth Naval Ship Gwangido. You are holding 12 of my people hostage. You will release them immediately and withdraw from this system. Thel blinked in surprise, then he laughed. You make demands of me, 1 ship against 3. You are either very brave or very stupid, Captain. There was a pause. When Tiho spoke again, his voice had not changed, still calm, still cold. I am not making demands, Commander. I am giving you a warning. Release my people. Leave this system. There will be no negotiation. There will be no second chance. Thel's amusement faded. No species had ever spoken to him like this. Not since the Dominion had achieved supremacy. This human was either insane or did not understand his situation. Perhaps you need a demonstration, Thel said. He turned to his weapons officer. Fire a warning shot. Show them what Velari weapons can do. The weapons officer obeyed. A bolt of blue energy lanced across space toward the Guangido. It was not meant to destroy, only to frighten. It never reached its target. The human ship's point defense systems activated in a fraction of a second. Small cannons tracked the incoming bolt and fired. The Velari shot exploded harmlessly in empty space, destroyed before it came anywhere close to the hull. Silence fell over the Velari bridge. The weapons officer stared at his console with disbelief. That is not possible. Our weapons travel at near light speed. No targeting system should be fast enough to intercept them. Sub-Commander Rin stepped forward, her face troubled. Commander, the human ship is accelerating. They are moving toward us. Thel looked at the tactical display. The human warship was indeed moving, but not away, not retreating. It was coming straight at them, engines burning at full power. They are attacking. Thel could not believe it. One ship attacking three. It was madness. On the bridge of the Guangido, Captain Park Tiho sat in his command chair with his hands resting calmly on the armrests. Around him, his crew worked with smooth precision. No panic, no fear. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Lieutenant Commander Kim Yuna stood at the weapons console, her fingers dancing across the controls. Neural implants connected her brain directly to the ship's targeting systems. She could think faster than any alien computer. She could see trajectories before they happened. "Captain," she said, "the enemy ships are forming a defensive triangle, standard formation. They expect us to attack from range." Tiho nodded slightly. "Then we will not attack from range. Take us through the middle." Yuna smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Understood, all weapons charging, railguns ready, missiles armed." The Guangido dove into the heart of the Velari formation. What followed was unlike anything the Velari had ever experienced. They had fought many species over 3,000 years. Some were aggressive, some were clever, but none of them fought like this. The humans did not follow logical patterns. They did not maintain safe distances. They pushed into close range where their heavier armor gave them an advantage. They took hits that should have forced them to retreat, but they kept coming. Yuna coordinated the weapons with terrifying efficiency. Railgun rounds punched through Velari shields and tore into hull plating. Missiles spiraled through space, evading point defense fire, slamming into engine clusters and weapon batteries. The first Velari cruiser lost its main weapons in the opening minutes. The second tried to flank the human ship, but was caught by a barrage of missiles that crippled its engines. High Commander Thel watched in horror as his fleet fell apart. "This is impossible. They are just one ship, one primitive human ship." Elder Valith stood at the back of the bridge, forgotten by everyone. He watched the battle unfold on the tactical display, and he felt the weight of 4,000 years pressing down on him. The ancient records had warned them. The Terrans were not like other species. They carried violence in their blood, written into their very souls. "They are not primitive," Valith whispered to himself. "They are survivors. Every war they ever fought, every enemy they ever faced, they learned from it. They evolved, and now they are showing us what they have become." On the Guangido, the crew moved like a single organism. Damage reports came in from various sections. Minor hull breaches, a few injuries, but the ship held together. The ship kept fighting. Tiho read the battle like a poem. He could see the patterns, the rhythms, the flow of combat. The Velari were skilled, but they fought with logic and doctrine. Humans fought with instinct and adaptation. They changed tactics in the middle of battle. They took risks that no sane commander would take. Because humans were not always sane, that was their greatest strength. "Target the flagship," Tiho ordered. "Concentrate all fire on their command ship. Cut off the head." Yuna locked onto Thel's cruiser. The Guangido banked hard, engines screaming, and came around for a direct attack run. Thel saw them coming. He ordered evasive action, but his ship was too large, too slow. The human warship moved like a predator, fast and deadly. Railgun rounds slammed into the flagship's bridge section. Explosions ripped through the command deck. Thel was thrown from his feet as consoles erupted in sparks and flame. Officers screamed. Lights flickered and died. When Thel pulled himself up, half his bridge crew was dead or wounded. The tactical display showed the horrible truth. 2 of his cruisers were crippled. His own flagship was badly damaged, and the human ship was still coming, still fighting, barely scratched. "Commander," Rin called out from across the destroyed bridge. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. "We cannot win this fight. We must withdraw." Thel stared at the display. His hands trembled with rage and disbelief. 3 cruisers, the pride of the Velari Dominion, destroyed by 1 ship, 1 human ship. "No," he said, his voice shaking. "No, I will not accept this. I will not be defeated by primitives." He stumbled to the navigation console and entered commands himself. "If I cannot win, I will take something from them. Set collision course for the civilian vessel. Maximum speed." Rin's eyes went wide. "Commander, that is madness. We will die." "Then we die with honor, better than living with this shame." The Velari flagship turned away from the Guangito and accelerated toward the Bikdu. Its engines burned with desperate fire, pushing the damaged ship toward the defenseless research vessel. On the Bikdu, Ensign Choi Sung saw the flagship coming. His blood turned cold. "Dr. Han, the alien ship, it is heading straight for us. I think they are going to ram us." Mina grabbed the back of his chair. "Can we move? Can we get out of the way?" "No, our engines are too slow. We cannot escape." The flagship grew larger on their screens. Death was coming for them, burning across the void. But on the Guangito, Captain Park Ti-ho had already seen Thel's move. He understood it immediately. If the enemy could not win, they would destroy something precious. Take something from the humans, make them feel loss. Ti-ho would not allow it. "Navigation, intercept course. Put us between the flagship and the civilian ship, now." The helmsman did not hesitate. The Guangito changed direction, engines screaming at full power. The warship raced across space, pushing itself to the limit, metal groaning under the stress. It was going to be close, very close. Yuna looked at her captain with something like wonder in her eyes. He was willing to sacrifice his ship, his crew, everything, to protect 12 scientists he had never met. That was what it meant to be human. That was what the Velari had never understood. The Velari flagship burned through space like a dying star. Its engines pushed beyond their limits, flames trailing from damaged systems. High Commander Thel stood at the center of his ruined bridge, blood on his face, madness in his eyes. He could see the human civilian ship on his screen, small, helpless. 12 lives that he would end with his final act. If he could not have victory, he would have revenge. "Faster," he screamed at his crew. "More power to engines. I want that ship destroyed." Sub-Commander Rin struggled to her feet. The explosion had broken her arm and it hung at an unnatural angle by her side, but she forced herself to speak. "Commander, please, this is not war, this is murder. Those are civilians, scientists. They have done nothing to us." Thel turned to her with wild eyes. "They are human, that is enough. Their species humiliated us today. They must pay, everyone must pay." Rin looked at her commander and saw something she had never seen before. Fear, pure, animal fear hiding behind anger. Thel was not attacking out of strategy or honor. He was attacking because he could not accept what had happened. His pride had shattered and this was all he had left. On the Bikdu, the crew watched their death approaching. Ensign Choi Sung worked frantically at his console, trying to squeeze more power from the engines. But the research vessel was too slow. It could not escape. Dr. Han Mina gathered her people together in the center of the ship. 12 scientists holding each other, waiting for the end. Some prayed, some cried, some simply stood in silence, accepting their fate. Mina thought about her life. All the years of study, all the dreams of discovery, all the hope for finding friends among the stars. It had led here to a cold death in empty space, killed by aliens who saw humanity as nothing more than insects to crush. But she did not regret coming. She did not regret reaching for the stars. That was who humans were. They reached for things beyond their grasp. Sometimes they fell, but they never stopped reaching. Then Sung shouted from his station, "Dr. Han, look, the warship." Mina ran to the screen and saw something that made her heart stop. The Guangido was moving, not away from the battle, not toward safety. It was racing toward the flagship, pushing itself between the Velari ship and the Bikdu. It was putting itself in the path of destruction. On the bridge of the Guangido, Captain Park Tiho watched the tactical display with calm eyes. The numbers were not good. The flagship was coming fast. The Bikdu was too slow to escape. The only way to save them was to stop the flagship by force. "Time to intercept?" he asked. The navigation officer answered quickly. 47 seconds, Captain. We will reach firing position with approximately 12 seconds before impact." 12 seconds, not much time, but Tiho had worked with less. "Yuna," he said, turning to his weapons officer, "load everything. Every railgun, every missile, every torpedo. When we reach firing position, I want you to empty our magazines into that ship." Lieutenant Commander Kim Yuna nodded. Her face was hard, focused, without fear. "Understood, Captain. What about our own position? If we stay between them and the civilian ship, we could be caught in the explosion." Tiho looked at her steadily. "I know." She held his gaze for a moment. Then she smiled slightly. "It has been an honor serving with you, sir." "The honor is mine, Commander." The seconds ticked away. The two ships raced toward each other. On the Velari flagship, Thel could see the human warship moving to intercept. He laughed bitterly. "They think they can stop me. They are as foolish as they are arrogant. We will destroy them both." Elder Valith stood at the back of the bridge, forgotten by everyone. He watched the human ship speeding toward them, weapons charging, putting itself between the flagship and its prey. He had read about this in the ancient texts. The Terrans had done this before, 4,000 years ago, sacrificing themselves to protect others, dying so that others might live. It made no logical sense, but it was terrifying in its own way. A species that would throw away their own lives for strangers. What could you possibly do against enemies who did not fear death? The Guangido reached firing position. 12 seconds remained before the flagship would hit the Bikdu. "Fire," Tiho commanded. Yuna unleashed everything. Railgun rounds screamed across space, punching through the flagship's weakened hull. Missiles spiraled and struck engine clusters, weapon systems, bridge sections. Torpedoes slammed into the central reactor housing. The Velari flagship shuddered under the assault. Explosions ripped through its structure. Hull plates tore away and spun into the void. The ship began to break apart, its forward momentum carrying the wreckage toward its original target. But the damage was done. The flagship's engines died. Its trajectory changed. The wreckage tumbled and scattered, passing beside the Bikdu instead of through it. The research vessel was safe. But the Guangido was not clear. A massive piece of the flagship's hull, spinning wildly through space, slammed into the warship's port side. The impact threw everyone on the bridge from their feet. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered. Tiho pulled himself up and looked at the damage reports. Hull breaches on 3 decks, casualties in engineering, 1 engine offline, but the ship was still alive. The crew was still fighting. "Status report," he demanded. Yuna wiped blood from her lip and checked her console. Weapons down to 40%, shields holding at minimal power, but we can still fight, Captain. Tiho nodded. He looked at the tactical display. The flagship was gone, reduced to scattered debris. The 2 other Velari cruisers drifted nearby, crippled and burning. It was over. On one of the damaged cruisers, Sub-Commander Rin pulled herself to the communications console. High Commander Thel was dead, killed when the bridge exploded. She was now the highest-ranking officer remaining. She looked at the destruction around her. Hundreds of Velari dead, 3 cruisers destroyed or crippled, all because of one human ship, one warship crewed by creatures they had dismissed as primitives. Rin opened a channel to the human vessel. Her voice was tired and broken. "Human ship, this is Sub-Commander Rin of the Velari Dominion. We surrender. We request mercy." There was a long pause. Then the human captain responded. His voice was still calm, still controlled, but there was something else in it now. Not anger, not hatred, something like sadness. "Sub-Commander, your surrender is accepted. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with force. But if you cooperate, your surviving crew will be treated humanely." Rin felt tears running down her face. She did not understand these creatures. They had fought with terrifying violence. They had destroyed her fleet without mercy. And now they offered kindness. It made no sense. But she was too tired to argue. "Understood. We will comply. Thank you, Captain." On the Bikdu, the crew watched the Velari ships go dark. They watched the Guangido drift slowly toward them, battered but unbroken. And they cheered. They cried. They held each other and laughed with pure joy. Dr. Hanmina stood at the observation window and watched the warship approach. Its hull was scarred and burned. Smoke trailed from a dozen breaches, but it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Ensign Choi Sung came to stand beside her. "They saved us. They actually saved us." Mina nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, they did. They came across the stars and fought impossible odds just to bring us home." "Why?" Sung asked. "They did not know us. They risked everything for strangers. Why would they do that?" Mina thought about the question for a long time. She thought about human history. The wars and the violence, yes, but also the sacrifices. The firefighters who ran into burning buildings. The soldiers who threw themselves on grenades. The strangers who jumped into rivers to save drowning children. "Because that is who we are," she finally said. "We fight for each other. We protect each other, even when it costs us everything." She looked at the warship, drifting in the starlight. "Especially when it costs us everything." On the Guangido, Captain Park Ti-ho allowed himself a moment of quiet relief. The battle was won. The civilians were safe. His crew had survived. But he knew this was only the beginning. The Velari Dominion was vast, and they had just humiliated one of their fleets. There would be consequences. There would be retaliation. Humanity was no longer hidden in its corner of the galaxy. The universe knew they existed now, and the universe had learned that humans were not prey. They were something far more dangerous. They were wolves who had learned to build starships. News travels fast across the galaxy, faster than ships, faster than light. Within days of the battle at Kepler 442, every spacefaring species knew what had happened. The Velari Dominion, the great power that had ruled unchallenged for 3,000 years, had been humiliated by a single ship from an unknown species called humans. Some species were terrified. If these humans could destroy 3 Velari cruisers with one warship, what else could they do? What other weapons did they have? Were they conquerors like the Velari, ready to sweep across the galaxy and crush everyone in their path? Others were intrigued. The Velari had oppressed them for generations. Perhaps these humans were different. Perhaps they could be allies, friends, partners in building something better. And on the Velari homeworld, there was only chaos. Elder Valith stood before the High Council in the great chamber that had governed the Dominion for 1,000 years. The council members stared at him with shock and anger. They did not want to hear what he had to say, but they had no choice. "The humans are not primitives," Valith said, his old voice echoing in the vast chamber. "They are the Terrans, the same species our ancestors fought 4,000 years ago, the war we erased from our history, the enemy we pretended did not exist. A council member slammed his fist on the table. This is absurd. One ship does not prove anything. We will send a fleet, a real fleet. We will crush these humans and take their planet. Valith shook his head slowly. You do not understand. We tried that before. Our ancestors sent fleet after fleet. The Terrans lost every battle in the beginning. They were outmatched, outgunned, outnumbered. But they did not surrender. They learned. They adapted. They got stronger. He paused and looked around the chamber. The war lasted 200 years. When it finally ended, both civilizations were nearly destroyed. We did not win that war. We survived it. And our ancestors were so ashamed that they buried all records and pretended it never happened. The council fell silent. Fear crept into their eyes. Another council member spoke, her voice trembling. What do you suggest, Elder? That we do nothing, that we allow this insult to stand? Valith met her gaze steadily. I suggest we make peace, real peace, before we awaken something we cannot stop. The humans have been alone in their corner of the galaxy for centuries. They have had time to build, to grow, to prepare. If we go to war with them again, we may not survive this time. The debate continued for hours. Some wanted revenge. Some wanted caution. But in the end, Valith's words planted a seed of doubt that would not go away. Weeks later, Sub-Commander Rin arrived on Earth as a diplomatic envoy. It was a strange experience for her. She had expected a world of war and violence, filled with soldiers and weapons. What she found was something very different. She walked through cities filled with families, children playing in parks, artists painting pictures, musicians playing songs, farmers tending fields, people laughing, crying, loving, living ordinary lives. These were the same creatures who had destroyed her fleet. These gentle beings who smiled at strangers and helped old people cross streets. Rin was assigned a guide during her visit. Lieutenant Commander Kim Yuna, the same woman who had commanded the weapons during the battle. Rin was nervous around her at first. This human had killed hundreds of Velari with cold efficiency. But Yuna was kind to her. She showed Rin the beautiful places on Earth, mountains covered with snow, oceans filled with strange fish, forests so green they hurt the eyes. She explained human customs and answered Rin's endless questions with patience. One evening, they sat together on a hillside and watched the sunset. Rin finally gathered the courage to ask the question that had troubled her since the battle. How can your species be like this? She asked. In battle you were monsters, efficient, ruthless, terrifying, but here you are so gentle, so kind. I do not understand. How can you be both things? Yuna thought about the question for a long time. The sun painted the sky in shades of orange and red. Finally, she answered. We fight so we can protect what is soft, she said quietly. The violence is not who we are. It is what we are willing to become when something we love is threatened. She looked at Rin with calm eyes. Every human child learns two things from the moment they are born. First, that there is good in the universe worth protecting. Second, that there is evil that wants to destroy that good. She paused and looked back at the sunset. We do not enjoy war. We do not seek it. But when someone threatens our families, our friends, our home, we become something else, something older, something that has been sleeping inside us since we lived in caves and fought with sticks and stones. Rin shivered slightly. She was beginning to understand. Your species is gentle because you choose to be, she said slowly. Not because you are weak. You could be terrible if you wanted, but you choose kindness. Yuna nodded, and we protect that choice with everything we have. Far away on the Velari homeworld, Elder Valith addressed the High Council one final time. He had spent weeks preparing his final argument, gathering evidence, building his case. This was the most important speech of his life. I have studied the humans, he said. I have read their history. I have learned about their wars, their mistakes, their triumphs, and I have reached a conclusion. He looked around the chamber at the faces of the most powerful beings in the Dominion. They are not our enemies. They do not want to conquer the galaxy. They do not want to destroy us. They want only to be left in peace, to explore, to learn, to grow. But if we threaten them, if we attack what they love, they will fight. And they will not stop fighting until we are destroyed or they are. He took a deep breath. I urge this council to seek peace, true peace, not the submission we demand from other species, but partnership, cooperation. We can learn from each other. We can build something better together, or we can go to war and destroy everything. The council voted that night. It was close. Many still wanted revenge, but fear and wisdom won in the end. The Dominion would pursue peace with humanity, real peace. Months passed, then years. Slowly things began to change. Other species saw the Velari making peace with humans. They grew bold. Some sent messages to Earth, asking if humanity accepted allies. Some began to resist Velari control, knowing that the Dominion was no longer the unchallenged power it once was. The galaxy was waking up, and humanity was at the center of it all. On the Guangido, now repaired and stronger than ever, Captain Park Tiho received a message from Earth Command. A promotion, a new assignment, a desk job at headquarters, coordinating the new era of galactic diplomacy. He turned it down. I prefer the stars, he told the Admiral. I prefer my ship. There is still work to do out there, still people who need protecting. The Admiral argued. Tiho was a hero now, the most famous captain in the fleet. He deserved recognition, comfort, reward. But Tiho would not change his mind. He belonged on the bridge of a warship, watching the endless darkness and waiting for the next call for help. Dr. Hanmina continued her research. She published papers about the Velari, about first contact, about the lessons humanity had learned. She became a professor, teaching young scientists about the wonders and dangers of the universe. And sometimes she received visitors. A Velari historian named Valith came to study at her university. He wanted to learn about human history, to understand the species his ancestors had feared. They became friends, two scholars from different worlds, searching for truth together. Ensign Choi Sung transferred to the Guangido. He had found his calling during those dark hours when the aliens surrounded the Bikdu. He wanted to protect people. He wanted to be there when someone sent a desperate signal into the darkness. He became a fine officer. Captain Tiho was proud of him. And out in the galaxy, among the 1,000 species who watched and waited, a new word began to spread. A warning and a promise passed from world to world, written in 100 languages. Do not mistake kindness for weakness. Do not mistake silence for surrender. And never, ever threaten a human's family. Because somewhere out there, among the stars, the wolves are watching. And they will always come. Captain Park Tiho stood on the bridge of the Guangido and looked out at the endless void. Stars glittered in the darkness, each one a sun, each one perhaps home to life and wonder and danger. Humanity was no longer alone. The galaxy knew they existed. Some feared them, some admired them, some wanted to be their friends. It was a new era, a new beginning, and whatever came next, humanity would face it together. Because that was what they did. They reached for the stars. They protected their own. And they never, ever gave up. The end.